All right, chapter 18 introduces and is mostly solely focused on this idea of passive voice. Okay, and specifically, this is passive voice in the first and second conjugations. And it's also for just the present system of verbs. So this would be the present, imperfect, and future tenses. Okay, so we're going to get third and fourth conjugation in another chapter, and then we'll get the perfect system, the perfect, pluperfect, and future perfect verbs in another chapter as well. So this is going to be a theme for a few chapters. We have all of the active voice tenses in. We have present, imperfect, future, perfect, pluperfect, future perfect in the active voice. Now we got to deal with the passive, and we're going to take it sort of step by step. So remember again, first and second conjugation. Those are ARE infinitives or a long ERE as well. So there's that. But just to review quickly, what passive voice. What's this idea of voice? And let's just briefly. Here are the characteristics for any verb. A verb has person, number, tense, mood, and voice. Person again, first, second, third person. Number, singular, plural. Tense, when it's happening. Present, imperfect, future, future perfect, pluperfect. And then mood. Indicative, just like stating a fact. Imperative, a command. Or the subjunctive, which we haven't dealt with yet, and don't worry about it right now. And then we have voice. And this is sort of saying like how or who is doing the action is a way. And you have two options. There's either active, which we've learned to this point. Technically, every verb that we've learned is a particular tense and active voice, or passive. And this might be a familiar topic from English class, like avoiding the passive voice, something like that. But for now, it's a little different in Latin as far as at least how it's formed. Okay. Essentially, the passive voice, you're going to want to use a form of to be and then with a verb. So to be seen or to be heard is going to be it, instead of just active voice, which was like to blank, to see or to hear, to love. Okay. Really, we just add that form of to be, and that kind of makes a verb passive when we translate it into English. Latin does it a little differently. So active voice, just let's compare the two. So active voice, we could say something like, the people love Caesar, okay? And here, the people, your subject, are doing the action, verb. They're the ones carrying it out. The people are doing the loving, right? And who are they loving? They're loving Caesar, our direct object, okay? Well, essentially, grammatically, what you can do is you can flip around the subject and the direct object and make it a passive sentence. So we could also say this as Caesar is loved by the people. A pretty true statement from Rome. Okay, and now here we have our subject Caesar is loved. He's not actually doing the loving, right? He's being loved by someone, the people. Okay, so Caesar becomes our subject here, and our subject in the active sentence becomes really a prepositional phrase. It's going to be or ob, with the ablative. So people would be in the ablative here, right? But really that's all it's doing, is we're flipping around our subject and our direct object in an active sentence and making it passive by making our direct object our subject and our subject the noun in a prepositional phrase by the people. Okay? Technically what's happening. But as you can see, Caesar is not actively doing the loving. He is not the one loving anything. He's being loved. And that's the idea of passive. The verb is no longer being done by the subject. It's being carried out by something in a phrase here. Okay? So, passive rules for Latin. All right? Here's the passive rules for Latin. Simply, to form the passive voice, all you do is you substitute the passive endings for the active endings. Okay? That's all you do. It's as simple as that. There's a few exceptions, but here's what it looks like, right? You have your active endings. O or M, ST, mus, tis, NT, okay? All we're going to do is swap those endings out for passive endings, and here they are. R, ris, tour, more, many, and then tour. Okay, this is a very important chart. I would suggest copying this chart down. I would definitely know this chart. Okay, let me erase that so you can actually do it now. But copy down this chart. It is super important. It's supposed to be a star. Okay, are, ris, tour, more, many, and tour. The verbs are formed the same way. You can think of it as switching and ending, right? Form the active tense, form the active voice, what we already know, and just replace it. Replace that ending, that personal ending, for the passive ending, right? O or M, replace with an R. S, ris. T, tour. Mus, more. Tis, many. NT, entor, right? That's all you gotta do. So if we look at some examples here, if we did present active, here's what it looks like in the present. Amo, amas, amat, amamas, amatas, amant. I love, you love, he, she, it loves. Okay. We do have some exceptions here, but for the most part, you're going to see amor. This is an exception. Okay, and we already saw this with video. Video, I see. And in the vocab, we got videor with an OR there, right? All you do is you add an R to your present tense I form, right? And you're going to do that for every one of them. So amor is just I am loved, which is going to be hard because amor, amoris. It looks exactly like the noun form. And then amas, okay? Change out your S for ris, amaris. You are loved. Amator, he, she, or it is loved. Amamor, we are loved. Amamini, you are loved, plural. And then amantor, they are loved. Okay? That's all it is. Simple as that. Replace your present endings, your present personal endings, for your passive ones. Are, ris, tor, more, many, and tor. Need to know those. Okay? Going on to the imperfect. Same exact thing. Bam, bas, bat. Bamas, batis, ban. Replace your personal endings with the passive form. So, M, replace it with R. S, ris. I'm a baris. Okay, you were loved. I'm a bator. I'm a ba-mini. I'm sorry, more, rather. More, mini. And then I'm a bantor. Okay. Aris, tor, more, mini, and tor. I was loving. I'm a bomb. I was being loved. Right. Future tense. This is one that's a little weird. I'm a bore. Okay. And then this one too. Instead of just replacing the S, instead of like I'm a B-I-R-I-S, biris, it becomes beiris for some reason. And these are the two that are just a little weird. Besides that though, it's perfectly normal. Bitor, bimor, bimini, and buntor. I remember that changes to a U. Yeah, that's all it is. So I will love, I'm a bow. I will be loved, I'm a bore. Make sure you copy these down just so you have at least one full chart of these to compare and contrast. Okay. Moving on, passive infinitive. Okay, so you can change this out. So we can say to love, which we should already know is just amare. Right? To love. Change out the final E for an I, and you get the passive infinitive. To be loved is amari. And that works, this rule works for every single first and second conjugation verb. Right? You can say wokara, to call. To be called, wokari. Works for every one of them. Change the E for an I. There you go. Passive infinitive. Last thing to talk about, okay, is this idea of ablative of agent. You're going to see this a lot. So if we said Caesar was loved by the people, okay, going back to our original sentence, okay, anytime we have a passive verb, typically we need an ablative of agent, which is technically just a or ab with an ablative, usually a person. Okay, so if we said this would be Caesar was loved by the people, and you could say a populo, by the people, and then was loved, imperfect. So I would say this is probably bator, Caesar was loved by the people, ab populo. Technically, this is just a prepositional phrase, but technically what it is an example of this ablative of agent. Okay, and this is going to be a little bit different than ablative of means. So ablative of agent is typically a person or something that can actually like do things, an entity, whereas ablative of means is with a thing, right? And it's a lot of times it's going to look the same. You're still going to have by there, but ablative of means, remember, is showing an object that's being used to carry out something. So if we said Caesar was killed by swords, we'd still have Caesar. We'd still have a passive verb, was killed by swords. We would just say something like gladiis and use the ablative form of gladium, and then it's still, we use neko, nakara, nekantor. Okay, Caesar was killed. Oh, sorry. That was Caesar is killed. Nekabator. Okay. Nekabator was killed by swords. This is different, right? This is just a word in the ablative. It's a thing that's being used to kill Caesar, right? Kind of true statement. There's no ought or ob with ablative of means. We've already talked about it, been over it. There's a page in the book that gives you a lot of examples of these. I would look at it. It's like right before the vocab. I would suggest looking at that, look over it. There's a bunch of examples of what makes it ablative of agent, and you'll see it's a lot of persons being identified. Ablative of means, a lot of things. But that's kind of it for the chapter. It's really simple. Okay, I would suggest please know these passive endings. They're very important. If you get this chart down, everything else is pretty easy.